actually
So how's
recording.
so
This
how's
year's
your
been,
year going?
it's okay. It's just so unpredictable. What about you guys?
Same thing. I just call it getting used to our constant new normal, just kind of keep the students in the forefront. I was reading an article last night, and that's something that really grounded me back in this work is they're saying within teaching, there's so many different things that go on in the work that we do. But if we remain grounded in our students and their purpose, it'll always bring us back. And I
You send that to me.
yes.
Thank you. It's relevant right now. I think everyone could use that.
Just give it some grace. Don't forget what we're in this for. Of course, we need to make sure we're safe, right? I do agree with that. But it also helps that we just kind of stay grounded in our work and our purpose. Mhm.
There's always this like awkward moment before things go live.
Told you to
know,
talk
right?
amongst yourself. I'm not. This is the part where you guys entertain each other, and
No, but you might catch us mid-conversation.
Right, right. So Greg was telling me about your most recent parent event where you actually had parents to do some of the workshops, or
We
they were involved.
they were involved. We had some parents give us some tips for like learning at home, and then we were able to highlight those. So some of our parents are really having a successful time with like virtual learning and balancing it. So they gave us some tips, and then we were able to share and present those at our last parent night. And we have a parent night tonight as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's what just keeps me grounded in this work that we do together. Is it, it really is all about the families.
Yes.
And not forgetting that it's a little bit more difficult, I think, in the virtual setting, but we can still make it happen.
That's very true. Yep.
Just gotta.
okay, Brenda and Jamie, so happy
Hi
to
there.
have you on the Square Pizza Pod officially. Thanks for accepting the friendly invite.
Yay.
Okay, so we're gonna get started. I think the context we've said, and I think what of course, so many things make you both unique and wonderful, but at least professionally, what's bringing us together is around this district charter partnership that you two were on the forefront of beginning almost 4 years ago now. You can believe we've been friends for 4 years. So would love, I think as we've thought about this, I think that's really the context of how we can share how you both have approached this work, maybe, honestly, the challenges, but also some of the wins. And so other, kind of school leaders and school admins and families out there as well can understand, one, that maybe it's possible, and two, if they are interested in it, how they might go about building a partnership that you two have built. So we always like to start with a little bit of fun. Jamie, I think we know you're from Buffalo, so I want to check in with you about the recent Buffalo Bills
Don't
game.
go there.
And how you're recovering, from that, if you're recovering, of course.
I am. I think just in perspective, it was a great season, and you have to remember, like, we went a lot farther than a lot of other teams, and it was just so nostalgic because I grew up in a Bills fan home, and my father was such a huge Bills fan. So like to have that moment and to just see it was incredible. I would have loved to see him playing this weekend, but
understand.
I'm also understand that it's not going to happen, and there's always next season. So
thank you for being a
I
good. Sounds like you've rehearsed those talking points at night to help you go to bed. Like, it's okay. They made it part of another teams. They had a good season.
I've had to have this conversation multiple times. So, I still love them.
Elevator speech. Great. That's so good. I love it.
Okay, now Ms. Brenda, I don't think Myrtle Beach has a professional football team that I know about.
No.
I am like embarrassed to know that I didn't actually know where you were from as much as we've like interacted, but the dirt and the rumor on you is that you really like to dance. And so I want to know if this is true. And I want to know like more about the dancing Brenda that I've never known before.
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes. You really went deep into the archives for that. So those people who know me best know that dancing is my love language. That
Okay.
is how I
Mm.
kind of release stress and just kind of forget things. And yes, love to dance. I guess it also comes from the fact growing up in Myrtle Beach, football was huge on Friday nights. And so as you probably can imagine, I was a cheerleader.
Okay. I can see that. That
And
makes sense.
so
That makes a lot of sense.
and so it's kind of in my bones a little bit, as far as, being a cheerleader for many, many years and just loving, cheering and dancing and all of that just goes hand in hand. Absolutely.
Is there like a type of, like, are you trained in dance or is there a type of dance you prefer?
Well, I love line dancing as I become a woman of a particular age.
No comment.
A wonderful age, right? I love the line dancing. I really got into that and learned some new ones while we've been, at home. Me and my family will come together, my circle, and we'll do like different dances and stuff. So
Sounds like we have a new team icebreaker happening here soon when we get back in person for in-person meetings. Okay, I appreciate you guys and indulging us a little bit there. Jamie, I want to start with you and maybe like let's just set the groundwork. Will you tell our listening audience kind of who you are and like your position, your title currently? Then would also love for you to just maybe go into basic charter school 101 and tell the good people what a charter school is.
Absolutely. So I am Jamie Sumter. I am the founding principal of Movement School Freedom here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've worked in both traditional public and charter schools throughout my career, but have spent a majority of my career working at charter schools. What a charter school is just a choice for parents. It's a free public school that we run. We fall under all the same regulations that a traditional public school does, except for we don't always have to do things the same exact way or fall under the same curriculums. But as far as like taking the same standardized tests, the same accountability, those things still exist for us. So charter schools were just created to give parents a different choice from traditional public schools. So there's many charters out there that specialize in serving special populations or like arts education or math and science. I lead a traditional one that just focuses on general academics and character education, but there is a wide gamut out there in North Carolina and across the country.
Yeah, I appreciate you setting that context, I think, which we'll get into the rest of our time today. But I think, and probably for both of you, there's assumptions about traditional public schools that maybe we'll get to break some of those today, and assumptions about public charter schools as well that I think we'll get to. So I think the answer is always in the middle and very nuanced. And so I appreciate you saying that. Also going back to you, Jamie. So sometimes there's a misconception about if charter schools are public schools. How do you answer that question?
We very much are a public school. We receive our funding same way that public schools do, and we serve the same students. Actually, we can serve all the students in the state, but normally we serve students within our neighborhoods.
Yep. And maybe last initial question here, controversial question. Also, sometimes nasty rumors going around that some charters, like, a term that's used like cream off the top or like self-select only certain kids and push away other kids. Can you talk about if that's true and or how you approach that?
It's absolutely not true. I have heard that though. How students get in is their parents apply to get in, but then how we select our students is through a blind lottery application. So when they apply, we don't learn anything about students, and then they're assigned a random number, and we do a random draw, and those how our students are accepted into charter school. So we have no prior knowledge of our scholars before they are enrolled in our building.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think, again, we're based in, well, we're having this conversation with two school leaders in North Carolina. So charter politics change state to state. And that varies a little bit. And also you/any charter leader can't be in control of what other charter school leaders are doing. But I think the ones we've all met and known and respect open and run schools by the law. And from our understanding, those charter schools accept the kids that sign up based upon their enrollment numbers that they're allowed to, and not by any other criteria.
Absolutely. And in recent years, it has been very closely monitored and by the Office of Charter Schools to make sure all schools do closely follow the policies that are outlined by the law.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe nod to accountability. I'm recalling a story once where we were both all in Raleigh together, and our district friends talked about viewing charters, kind of like defending their accountability, getting grilled by our friends at the state. So maybe we'll save that for later, but that brings up a good point. Ms. Brenda, we want to loop you in here. Tell the good people who you are, kind of the title you hold, and more about the Ashley Park family.
Yes, so as you stated, I do work at Ashley Park Prek-8, which is right around the corner from Movement, Jamie's school. I'm currently what we call a multi-classroom leader. And what that means is that I support teachers by coaching them and growing them from what I like to call from good to great. So I'm there to just support teachers in all gamuts of the classroom. This will be my 4th year at Ashley Park, and walking into Ashley Park through previous leadership, I was able to engage in this work. I didn't know what direction we were going in. I just trusted all the great people that I'm surrounded by right now and continue to be surrounded by. And from that, wonderful things have come out of it. We really have formed a really positive relationship, even though, we're right around the corner from each other, and we're supporting many students that are, in the same areas.
It's hard for me to tell people that it's challenging to bring districts and charters together, because when they meet you guys, you're both so nice and lovely that they think it's a joke. And so I don't think this is going to help anything, but nonetheless, I appreciate that context and you being a great person. I guess maybe a little bit of an oddball question, Brenda, but and I don't know if I've ever even asked you this, but I wonder, were there any misconceptions of charter schools that you had before we began this collab?
To be really transparent, it's kind of those things that you've mentioned before. So this collab has really helped to open my eyes to all of the possibilities, for families. My son actually is currently enrolled in a charter school. And it just gives another opportunity, another way. Public school is absolutely amazing with the opportunities that it can provide. I think with our partnership, what we've been able to do is just kind of merge those two great ideas together.
Yep.
For the best interests of all of our families. And I think that's why we've been able to have such a great collaboration, is because we don't see it as competition. We see it more as collaboration. And when I first stepped into this work, that's exactly how it was presented to me, as that of collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm gonna. This next follow-up was for you, Brenda, but I want to go to Jamie. And I think to set the context for those not familiar, Ashley Park has been in part of CMS on the west side of Charlotte for, let's say, 40, 50, 60 years, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
Not the newest building on the block. Our good friends at Movement were building a new building on top of a charter school. So one might say, there's little upside for a school like Ashley Park to collab and partner and share resources and share ideas to best support families. I guess I'm curious from your lens, and letting the people know why was there interest from your lens, and why did you decide to move forward with this partnership?
Well, it was for that of what you were saying, as far as we just wanted some new ideas. Jamie's school, of course, was a new school. Our school was pre-existing for many years, but one thing that we both were trying to support was that of making sure that we were engaging our families appropriately, right? For the best interest of our scholars that were coming to both of our schools. So with that collaboration, we were able to provide each other that support where the competition of it just never came into play. Ashley Park has also been newly renovated. Greg, we have a wonderful elective wing. So, and our building is
I've been there.
absolutely
I've seen some family
beautiful.
event. I've seen some successful family events at that new wing.
Yes, our building is absolutely beautiful.
Very true.
So in comparison, you know, we have two wonderful looking buildings or structures, new structures. But it was never, I mean, all of it was just based on trying to get our families involved in school. Yeah. And connecting with our families to make sure we were doing what's best for them based on what they're requesting. Yeah. And for them to see that we had a partnership that just allowed them to make, you know, more sound decisions about what direction they wanted to go in. Yep. And not really having to feel that competition between the two schools, no matter which one they may choose, be it Ashley Park or Movement.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that context. I want to go back to Jamie too. Jamie, like, can you share, I guess a two-part question back to you responding to Brenda about like your guys' interest in partnering with the big bad district from across the street, number one. And then number two, like why the interest of families, of like all the things a school leader can choose to collab on. Why was families an important focus for you?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, like for me, it's always about serving students and families and serving them well. And so as Movement was coming into West Charlotte, why not partner with a school who's been there and doing it and can pour so much knowledge into us about what is working and what is not. And at our first collaborative session, when we sat down and talked about like all the things that were going well and our challenges, one of the things that came up was just like, we're not doing enough to engage our families. And so we just started discussing like, why is that? And the conversation just flowed from there. It never felt competitive at all. It just felt like idea sharing and growing. And from there, it's just birthed into this great project 4 years later of continuing that. So we've always just kept the lens on how do we best serve our community, which we both serve, and how do we do what best by our scholars that we serve. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think, you know, for additional context, maybe we didn't set this, but, you know, you guys are less than, I think, a mile apart, maybe 1.2 miles away from each other on the west side of Charlotte, serving under-resourced and marginalized communities. And so it's a lot of challenges are coming to the school to just run a school day, but then to take the additional effort to think about community partnerships and ways in which you guys can both support and kind of love families. So not only providing like the academic support to students, but then the family supports for home and academics, I think is certainly commendable to both of you and your entire staffs. Brenda, would love to go back to you now too, like thinking about if there are other district school leaders, district schools, or just districts in general, thinking about partnering or collabing, sharing resources, sharing playbooks, sharing lesson plans, sharing community partners with the charters across the street. What would you tell them to be careful of? What would you tell them to think about? How would you advise them? What comes to mind?
Just remember that we're all in this business for the same reason. Let's not forget why we do what we do each day as educators. And that is, like Jamie just said, is that of support of our families and our students. And if we keep that in mind, then whenever there is that charter school that's across the street, just like a new neighbor, you will welcome them in, take them a nice muffin basket, and sit down and have coffee. And let's talk about how we can come together and work together as good neighbors, right? Because we're all in this together, with number one at the top being supporting our families and our scholars. And if we work together, we can just get more out of it versus just staying in our house and doing it by ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds nice in I guess like amongst friends and theoretically, but like if I pushed you a little bit, I think we've all maybe met educators and know principals that don't have that welcoming mindset as you do. I guess I'm wondering, like, how might we encourage or persuade other educators that either, you know, think something negative of charter schools or have had a bad experience with charter schools to really reconsider the approach you just offered?
Well, first of all, the leadership at in your building is going to really have to drive all of this.
Yeah.
It starts at the top. When I first started this work, our previous leadership, if I'm not mistaken, those conversations started, but among, our previous leadership and Jamie. So having those discussions first. So the leadership is going to drive all of the things that may go on next, be it, dispelling some of those myths about what could happen,
Yep.
or pushing through those myths in order to be able to push practice and do things that's going to be best for both schools. So for those schools out there that are thinking, I'm not sure, I think there, this may be a competition. I would say open your doors a little bit more, open your mind, kind of do your own research behind it first. See what collaborations you can actually get from that school across that charter school across the street or around the corner. Because one thing that I can say is, because of our collaboration, we've been able to broaden our thought processes around what we can do for our families. And I think that comes from both ends. Because what happens is when you just stay closed-minded or stay in your particular thought process, then you're going to limit opportunities that can come for the students and families that's in your school. So if there are some naysayers out there, I would just say do some deep reflection and kind of think about your why. And then once you think about that why, go out and start asking questions and ask those questions for yourself. And then from there, make a decision on what's going to be best for you and your staff and your families that you serve.
Yeah. Jamie, same question to you. Charter leaders, they're big and bold and visionary and are opening a brand new school. They don't need to listen to the district that's been around forever. Why would a charter school want to partner or share resources from their district neighbor?
So many reasons, but it's a lonely road out there, first of all. So let's be honest about that.
That's a great point.
And so when you can get across the table virtually or in person, wherever world we're living in, and start talking, you realize you have so many similarities and successes and challenges. And like we always say, work smarter, not harder. Yep. There is so much we have learned from this and things that we wouldn't be here yet had we not started on this partnership. And so could you get there alone? Yes, probably, but with so much more of a lift and a push on yourself or on your team. And again, like Brenda said, what's your why? Like, why are you in this community? Why are you serving? And if you have that question answered right, then this is a no-brainer for you.
Those are a great point. Want to give either one of you the opportunity. Hopefully there's at least one thing, but at least one thing you've learned from the other that perhaps you don't think you would have without this like district charter partnership taking place.
I've learned so much.
I know, that's to say the same thing. I'll say, I'll go first. So I think you can create a box for yourself or for your school, and this collaboration has opened that box. And so sharing what we're doing and seeing after our parent events and our successes and our challenges have helped each school improve their next event or think more creatively about it. And that's what I mean about the box. Like, we started very traditional, I think, both of us having like this traditional parent event lens on. And as we brought in our parent engagement teams and started talking about our events, like the creativity and the need to really engage more families and really meet them where they're at just grew from that. And that's something I learned from Ashley Park in this collaboration is, the traditional things that weren't working, why are we talking about replicating them? So let's talk about what's new and original or what worked for Ashley Park and how can we put our movement spin on it? And so many lessons, but that's the biggest one. It's just, you have to get out of your box and think bigger.
Yeah, that's Absolutely. Great. Yeah. Brenda?
Yeah. And Jamie said it. I mean, she said it best. I've been in education for over 20 years now, and I've had some or been involved in some wonderful events that really drew in large crowds of families. And then I've also been a part of some events that drew in maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 families, less than 10. And so with this partnership, it's like sky's the limit, as far as us being able to collaborate. Our parent events have opened the doors for our families to understand that we are there for them. And not saying that wouldn't happen without this partnership, but what it did by us collaborating, it allowed us to think of other ideas and other ways to bring them in and to draw them in. And so I really feel like this collaboration, like Jamie has said, has just opened us up with ideas to just draw in more families in more creative ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I build off that too, if we could. I think we've seen whether it's been like community partners that are great. They can easily be like, hey, we have another one come up 2 weeks from across the street from this school. We think you could, help families there, or maybe ones that weren't so great, or even small things like exit ticket distribution or like just systems that work and systems that don't work in an event driven type of thing. Just the ways in which you can share resources and best practices just helps the other schools just do even better, faster, and serve families even better. Yeah. Jamie?
Yeah, I was going to pick up on that resource piece. I think that's one other lesson that movement has really learned is we are in a community of a wealth of resources, but we weren't necessarily connected with them. Yeah. And through this partnership, as Ashley Park had a partner that worked really well, our parents really gravitated towards or talked about, then we were able to share and vice versa. And so that's become an underlying theme of all our events, or what resources are we going to have available to parents. And that's one place that like thinking outside of the box has definitely pushed us, because that's not something traditional. Yep. But also just the awareness of what is available as we've gained through this partnership.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to make you guys choose your favorite child in a moment. But as we think of like the families that have come up, shown out to these events, that have, participated in the family empowerment committees, that have like took part in some of the financial planning classes, like is there one family, one story, or just anything you want to share about what you've seen from families as a result of this?
Oh, wow. I can think of one family in particular, and if she's watching, she'll know exactly who she is. I call her the unicorn of our school.
Shout out to the
unicorn. She came in as a pre-K parent. At that point, she was actually a foster mother. And even as a foster mother, she would actually support these events 150%. And we've been able to grow a very close partnership with her in helping to support many of the events that we have. She has been really instrumental in many of the ideas and the directions that we go in when it comes to parent events. She's been instrumental in rebuilding and supporting our PTA. And she just continues to be a huge advocate for her child, as well as for the staff, not only at Ashley Park, but also movement. Yeah. Because she has witnessed not only events that have occurred at Ashley Park, but she's also been involved in, events where Ashley Park and movement have been together, because we have had events together. And so she is one of those unicorn family or parent that really is an advocate that spreads her love everywhere. Yeah. So I call her a unicorn, not so much because she's the only, parent that actually supports our events and our committee, but she's the one that spreads all the rainbow love around to everyone. And so that's why she's my unicorn, and continues to be very special as far as with this work that she does with us, and also for me, and pushing me and making sure that we're doing what's best for our families.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think too, those stories are so important, because whether they don't make flashy headlines or anything else, for whatever reason, we don't see a lot of positive, uplifting stories from families, particularly in marginalized communities, working so hard to support their kids and working with schools. And I think we've just seen, we've known it to be true, but we've seen the opposite through this work of how many families there are doing just, what you're saying, Brenda.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, anything from your experience?
There's so many, but first I want to say I know exactly who Brenda's speaking of, and it's 100% true. And I know from just joint events exactly which parent she's speaking of. But I think for me, there's a story from last year when we were still in person. After I think like our second event, I had a kindergarten parent stop me on the way out, and she was elated. And she just thanked us for our work and shared that, you know, she had a terrible experience in school. She was really, you know, dreading sending her child to kindergarten because she just assumed it would be more the same. And she was excited leaving that night. She understood what was going on in her child's class and left with resources to support her at home. And so she just thanked us and asked for us to continue. And she wanted more. And I said, I would love to do more, but these teachers work really hard. So
we started out with 10 events.
Yes, yeah. We sure did. And I told her that, and I said, but it burnt us out doing 10 events. But just the theme of that story, I've heard similar things before. Just changing that narrative for some of our families and having positive interactions with the school and teacher and being excited to go home and be able to, you know, work with their child and use these new resources. And it makes the teacher's job easier too, but it just strengthens that. But it really stood out to me that she stopped to thank me. And I was like, I did nothing but hire these people and, you know, put them together to plan this event. That's all thanks to the teachers and the staff who did it. But
give yourself a little bit of credit. But I think too, to even shine more light, like as our team collecting the data from the exit tickets, the number one feedback we get from families is more, either longer sessions, more sessions, or more resources. And so there's, you know, any notion that families don't want to be involved or aren't looking to better their kids or their own lives is 100% not true. I think families would come to 20 events if we had them and we had the army to do it if we could. Yep. Okay, it's coming up on time, but I want to get you guys out of here. Would love to just open it up to you. Just any final words of advice, navigating COVID, navigating the schools, tips for line dancing. You guys have a lot of education here that you can share with the audience as school leaders. Would love to just give you both the floor for final words.
I guess
since it was actually probably a conversation that Brenda and I were having offline before we got started. Okay. And you know, in all things in this crazy school year and thinking about parent engagement and thinking about anything new and challenging and scary, like you just have to ground yourself in the why. And that's always the kids, and in our case, the families we serve. And I think especially this year, we were just sharing, and Brenda's about to share me an article about grounding ourselves in that. And I think it's easy to get distracted by everything else if you allow it. So keeping yourselves and your teams grounded in why we started this work and where we're heading because of this work.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jamie said it best. You know, we would never think that I never would even imagine being an educator in this setting ever. Zoom, where did that come from? And now everyone knows. So, I mean, we have the resilience as educators to adapt, right? And we also have the know it with and the with itness as educators to be creative. And so if nothing else, I think being in this pandemic and things that are ever changing, we can see our educators are rising to the occasion. Like I was saying, a few months ago or a year ago around this time, we barely knew what a Zoom was and how we were going to Zoom. True. And now look, we're all on, ready to go. So I just want to say to anyone that's looking to do this work, just open your eyes because the possibility is there. Things that you think can't happen or won't happen or have a fear of, I don't know if I want to dabble into that, just open your eyes because the opportunity is there. And if nothing else that proves that, just look at us right now as far as being in this pandemic and how all of us have risen to the occasion.
That's great. Brenda, Jamie, thank you so much for being good humans and letting us be part of the work, and for taking time to drop all this knowledge, hoping that more leaders, more school leaders across North Carolina, across the country will have similar mindsets to support families and students the way you guys do.
All right. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yes, it was.